After years of asking, Five Nights at Freddy's is finally coming to Dead by Daylight. There are a lot of possibilities on how this crossover can pan out, and today I'm going to go over everything I could possibly think of that could happen in one of the most anticipated crossovers in DVD history. For those that don't know, the gameplay loop of Dead by Daylight, it's a one-sided multiplayer game where one player plays as the killer while four other players as survivors, with the killer's goal being hooking survivors to sacrifice them to the entity, and the survivors have to repair 5 generators scattered across the map in order to power 2 gates to escape, or if there's one survivor standing, escape through hats to also escape. Both killers and survivors have access to perks, hexes, and add-ons that changes or enhances how they play. To keep things simple for this video to understand, I only give one example for potential killers and survivors when we come to it. But before we get to the meat of the video, which is killers and survivors, I want to quickly go over the map we could possibly see. As the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, just as iconic to FNAF as the animatronics are, and well, the correct answer here would be to just pick one and call it a day. But I think having most of them merged into one amalgamation of the general horror that lurks in the shadows of Freddy's, like in the Ultimate Custom Night location, if you want a general idea of what I'm suggesting. Obviously, it'd be a lot more open, bigger, to fit into DBD's playstyle, but I do think this will be way they'll get a Freddy's location and DBD, as being an amalgamation of, say, FNAF 1 to Freeze's location. With the map out of the way, let's go through all the possible killers that could be added, and what better place to start this list than with the main antagonist and killer, William Afton, as the Springtrap. Personally, I think making him similar to the Xenomorph and use his ability to crawl through the vents being his main power by giving him Springtrap his own vent system, like the Xenomorph, to traverse the map, or make him similar to Ghostface by making him a stealth killer and having him stalk survivors like what he did in Lore and in FNAF 3 by hiding in the shadows of the cameras, or maybe even a mixture of the two, with the ways to stop Springtrap popping out of the vent being closing it at the exit, forcing him to pop out at a less convenient exit, and in a trace, using an audio lure like in FNAF 3, the survivors can force Springtrap to go in a different direction, away from them. But Springtrap can ignore an audio lure by passing some skill checks, or by passing a great skill check to immediately ignore the audio lure during a trace. Now for a weapon for Springtrap to use. As every killer in DBD has something to hit the survivors with their basic attack. I guess for Springtrap there will be his jump scare, but since the killer's perspective is first person, I don't think that would work. And going by other killers, I guess he could use something similar to the Hag, as she just uses her broken hand. So I guess see Springtrap having just using his hands and just swiping the survivors with an opened claw-like attack, or go with the movie and give him a knife. But personally, I think that would be better left for his movie skin. I can't talk about Springtrap without bringing up the Phantoms, and one of the more popular ideas I've seen is making them similar to the Knight's pals. As Knight can summon his pals to chase survivors, break generators, and obstacles. Well, it can work on paper, but Springtrap doesn't have the same type of connection to the Phantoms as Knight does to his pals. Hell, we don't even know if the Phantoms are even ghosts or just hallucinations. But that's not to say I don't think they could appear alongside Springtrap. If they do appear, I personally think it makes more sense if the Phantoms act like the Nemesis's zombies, basically being obstacles that will alert Springtrap of your location if the cat's a survivor, similar to how they work in FNAF 3. And most I can see them being Springtrap's hex. Basically, a perk has them to work independent of Springtrap. As I said, that's why I think as a more haunting Springtrap than working with him. So for gameplay wise, that means that they materialize around generators and vault points and pallets. And the way to combat them is either by just not looking at them and giving time to despawn, or flashing a flashlight at them to get rid of them, and finally finding the totem they're connected to and cleansing it to completely make them not appear again for the rest of the match. But if you do look at them for too long, they'll jump scare you, alerting Springtrap to your location. Finally, the possible skins Springtrap could have. Naturally, I can see him having recolors that reference the other body characters and have a non-ribbon skin, and for my own sanity, one that doesn't have the bow tie and just a button. With, of course, the have-ribbed, have-not-ribbed suit from the movie. Lastly, I could also see the Into the Pit Yellow Rabbit, Scraptrap, and Burntrap being skins too. Moving on from Springtrap, I think there are a few other animatronics that could have a chance of coming to DBD, that are the Fun Times and the Nightmares. as both groups are basically made for this type of scenario. And going by Scott's second interview with Dorko, I don't think we'll ever see any of the other possessed ones outside of Springtrap coming to DVD, as Scott doesn't want them to just be killer robots, which is shown in how they portrayed in the movie. They're still Springtrap's victims after all. Plus, they are all under 13, and for what I hope is for obvious reasons. Behavior, the creators of DBD can't have them in the game. Even as a robot bear, the soul control is still under that age. So we need ones that are not possessed, and the nightmares and the fun times fit nicely, with the sole exception being Circus Baby, sadly, as he's the only one who has outright stated to be possessed by someone who is under 13. Just so this video doesn't get too bogged down than it already is, I'm going to just talk about Nightmare Freddy, Foxy, and Fredbear. And for the fun times, just Freddy, Foxy, and Blower. Starting things off with Nightmare Freddy, I can see his power focusing around the Fiddles, those small Freddys you see on him. In FNAF 4, they gather on the bed behind the player, and if you let 3 of them sit on the bed for too long, Freddy then spawns and jumpscares you. So I think Freddy's power would be commanding the Fiddles to chase a survivor, and if they're able to latch onto one survivor, beginning to multiply, and after a few seconds of 3 Fiddles being on the survivor, Freddy can teleport to that survivor, jumpscaring them for an instant down, or jumpscaring them to an instant carry. But the survivor can wiggle them off, but wiggling those things off causes you to slow down, and the more they're on you, the more slowed down you are. Or, for a different survivor, defend them off with a flashlight to get rid of them. I can also see Nightmare Freddy being able to use fiddles to break obstacles or trap generators. When they are on it, survivors can't repair the generator. They have to remove them with a skill check, and more fiddles that appear on it, the more skill checks needed to remove them. But be careful, as Freddy can instantly teleport to that generator if you miss the skill check. With limitations to that ability being a longer cooldown, and naturally he can trap every single generator with this ability. For example of a perk being another hex, that is Fiddles Rush. That's right, the same attack from FNAF World we made for DBD. This hex will activate when a generator is repaired, and the more that are repaired, the faster the cooldown is for the fiddles to spawn. But unlike the fiddles that Freddy has access to, these hex fiddles don't latch onto anyone, just damage them, and even can down them. But like normal fiddles, flashlights make them despawn, and if the totem that the hex is connected to is broken, this passive ability is removed for the rest of the match. And naturally, Nightmare Freddy's weapon would be his claws. Finally, for skins, like Springtrap, I can see Nightmare Freddy having recolors that reference the other Freddy characters and Fredbear, alongside a repaired skin that fills in the holes in the suit. It kinda makes Nightmare Freddy look like a more conventional Freddy Fazbear, like one of those on Nightmare Freddy's edits you see online. Now onto Funtime Freddy, where I can see him acting similarly to how I described Nightmare Freddy, though a little more basic, as Funtime Freddy only has access to Bonbon, so I imagine Freddy can either just throw Bonbon, where if the body lands on the survivor, hinders them and slows them down, giving Freddy time to catch up. And naturally, the survivor can also wiggle off Bonbon. However, Freddy shouldn't take too long, as Bonbon's batteries will drain, and if their battery is fully drained, Bonbon will let the survivor go with no negative status effects. If Bonbon doesn't hit a survivor, or has their battery drained, the cooldown to use them again is extended. I can also see Phantom Freddy being able to have his own cage mechanic, like Pyramid Head does. It's basically an alternative way to sacrifice survivors alongside hooking them. If you didn't know, William Afton made Phantom Freddy with a stomach hatch, so when he's alone in a room with a kid, can quickly get at them, and so he can do whatever he does, I guess forcing them to have a play date with the nightmares. I can see the entity giving the stomach hatch the TARDIS effect, making it bigger on the inside. And if Freddy isn't a slow killer, he absolutely should be when there is a survivor in his stomach hatch. However, there's a way to get free, either by getting lucky with the on-hook chance, or for a different survivor that hits Phantom Freddy with a controlled shock. Survivors can find Fazbear crates around the map. Inside them is a shock device that can shock Freddy within his terror radius, and when it is used, it will despawn from the survivor's hand and beginning to respawn from where it came from. When Freddy is shocked and has a survivor in his stomach hatch, the survivor inside can perform a skill check to get out, or for a different survivor to simply open the stomach hatch for them to escape. Hanging himself is also a small chance of spawning from the crates, and other than being Easter egg, he acts exactly like the shock device. Funtime Freddy's weapon would be his microphone, which is definitely in character for this Freddy to bludgeon people with his mic. I can't really think of a perk for Freddy, but I can think of an add-on for him. As I said previously, add-ons are boosts you can equip to a killer's power/weapon. They range from cooldowns, applying status effects, to completely changing how the killer plays. The latter being what I'm thinking about, with Bonnet being an add-on that changes Freddy's power. The change being, instead of just throwing Bonbon at a survivor, with Bonnet equipped using Freddy's power, basically makes Phantom Freddy play similarly to the twins, where the player switches control from Freddy to Bonnet. He enters a standby mode while Bonnet is active. I can see Bonnet basically being a stronger Bonbon, having twice the battery life, but having twice the cooldown to compensate. Finally, skins will be very similar to Nightmare Freddy's, because their weapons to different Freddy's, and probably get a golden Phantom Freddy skin alongside a stylized golden Freddy skin. Next, Nightmare Foxy. He will work similarly to the Bride, as his gimmick is also running around until he either hits someone or runs out of steam. A common idea is to just make Foxy a bright skin, which is fair, but personally I would prefer him to be his own thing, and this is how I would like him to work. Nightmare Foxy can sprint, as you expect him to, but I want to carry over his hiding in the closet mechanic to DBD by having him hide in the lockers. Lockers are mostly used by survivors to hide from the killers, but some range killers, like the Huntress, use them in order to refill their power's ammo. So with Foxy, I will make his cooldown boost while he's in a locker, with it also being a good way to jump at a passing survivor to get a free hit. So that Foxy would be running around the map and either find a survivor to chase, or get into a locker to recharge, and maybe jump out at a passing survivor. There would be a counter to Foxy being in the locker, as the survivor could hear Foxy's breathing from within it. Alongside a Foxy plush would spawn nearby the locker Nightmare Foxy is in. The survivor has to place the plush in front of the Foxy's locker to trap him in it for a short period of time, or somebody does not go near that locker and hope Foxy wasn't looking in their direction. Nightmare Foxy's weapon would obviously be his hook. An example of a perk Nightmare Foxy could have is Nightmare Static, where Foxy is given Mangle's broken radio static, which makes him easily hearable in the area, like Huntress singing her lullaby for an in-game example. This perk could maybe give Foxy the undetectable status effect, so while you could hear him, you just gotta figure out where he is exactly because of the broken radio static, completely drowning out his footsteps. And if he is hiding in one or two nearby lockers, if you want to stun him with the plushie, you have to just guess which one he's in and hope for the best. While all this sounds strong, keep in mind, survivors can still see him, and a giant mechanical fox with glowing eyes can only hide so much in the mist. Finally, skins for Nightmare Foxy. You know the deal by now. Has recolors that reference the other versions of Foxy, has a grim Foxy skin, and maybe even has a special skin that turns Nightmare Foxy into Nightmare Mangle. While Steve will be a nightmare for the animation team, I can still see him being added, but maybe at a later date as a special Halloween skin or something. Now, Phantom Foxy. I'm going to use the Funtime Auditorium level as a basis for the gameplay, and make Foxy a stealth killer, as stealth killers hiding and stalking a survivor until the right moment to strike is very much in line with how Foxy worked in the Funtime Auditorium. So in an odd way, Funtime Foxy would be the most simple translation into DBD mechanically, as they are basically Ghostface, but with FNAF flair to them. For example, if Foxy is able to get a full stalk and down a survivor, the survivor gets jump scared by her. But to give Foxy something of their own, see why the game's protagonist is shoved into a spinlock suit in Night 4, so I suggest Foxy gets their own cage mechanic, so he can decide to either hook a survivor or shove them into a spinlock suit. So yes, it took me this long into the video, but I finally figured out a way to make a FNAF character shove a survivor into an animatronic suit like they're meant to. The survivor in the suit has to do skill checks to make sure the spinlocks don't go off and escape. The suit mechanically would be like a generator, but unlike a generator, if you fail too many times, you die and get sacrificed to the entity, but if you fill the gauge, you escape. Or a different survivor can save you by finding a nearby hand crank and using the hand crank to open the suit for you to escape. An example for a perk with Foxy is Hex Standby or Hex Lowbit. So you'll randomly show up around a survivor, and if they look at her for too long, they'll get stunned by Lowbit and have Lowbit's please stand by screen covering their own until they input LOL on the keyboard. For controller though, well, for PlayStation it's a pretty straightforward translation with left D-pad, circle, left D-pad. But for Nintendo and Xbox controllers, I guess either just swap the circle button for the A and B button respectively, or something do away with that and have them do a skill check to get rid of Lowbit. That's before Foxy. Skins. You know the drill. Recolors the reference to other Foxys, and maybe even a recolor that reference the Twisted Wolf and Roxanne Wolf. And finally, Lowbit. With the way to distinguish between Hex Lowbit and Player Lowbit is the Player Lowbit skin has a hook while the Hex Lobet doesn't. Finally, for the Nightmare animatronics, Nightmare Fredbear. Being the final boss of FNAF 4, he can move extremely fast and can teleport, so that's how I imagine Fredbear to be like as a killer, having a teleport power that's similar to another killer, the Dreads, by having his teleportation points being the lockers. And like how the Dreads has Nightfall, plunging the stage into darkness while leaving the Dreads with clear vision, Fredbear has a similar power, Lights Out, which has a similar effect, but during Lights Out, Nightmare Fredbear transforms into Nightmare. Nightmare, being secret boss of FNAF 4, is twice as strong as Fredbear, but the silver lining for survivors is that Lights Out is only temporary and only lasts a short amount of time of 60 seconds, like Dredge's Nightfall. After that time has passed, Nightmare reverts back into Nightmare Fredbear, and he will suffer with fatigue for a short time, transferring back. Fredbear's weapon would actually be his sharp knife-like claws. For example of a perk for Nightmare Fredbear, Mechanical Extinct. The nightmares were literally made for this. After entering a survivor for a short time, Fredbear can see any nearby survivors. Lastly, for Nightmare Fredbear, skins. Other than the usual recolors that reference the other bear characters and the on-Nightmare skin, Fredbear has two notable recolors: the early development skin from Help Wanted and the FNAF 4 teaser grayscale colors. Last but not least, Blower. She would have two modes: her dance mode, where she's doing her ballerina dance, and the really seen spider mode, where she quickly crawls on the ground, all while her music box plays. She would be a mixture of the alien and Huntress, but without the tunnels, turrets, and no throwing hatchets. Blower would have the power to switch between the two stated modes of dance and spider. While in dance mode, Blower can vault windows but can break the destructible walls, and she moves at average speed. Then in spider mode, she moves quickly, can vault windows but can break destructible walls. All the while, her music box plays, which would have the same radius as Huntress's lullaby. Blower would also have her tiny backup dancers, the Mininas. They would act like Nemesis's zombies, being a general nuisance, but will grab onto a survivor to slow them down for Blower, and can be ripped off by the grabbed survivor. As for Blower's weapon, like the alien, I can see her having two different ones depending on which mode she's in. If she's in dance mode, I think one of her legs could be it. She does move one of her legs during her dance to keep balance, so I can see why she can also use it to kick someone. And in crawling mode, it would just be her hands. For example, for a perk for Blower, she is known for having sensitive hearing, so I suggest that she has the perk that for anyone within Blower's terror radius / can hear her music box, Blower can see their auras through walls, or at least give the general idea of where they are. Lastly, skins. Other than a recolor that references Circus Baby, and maybe a Puppet's recolor skin, as both of them have music boxes, but it's pretty much it. That's why I think she could have a Puppet recolor skin. But Blower also has two skins from Five Nights at Freddy's Special Delivery, or simply FNAF AR, with Arctic and Clockwork Blower that could be brought over. With the possible killers out of the way, let's move on to the possible survivors the FNAF chapter could have. Starting it off with the protagonist of most of the original run of the games and the movie, Mike. Now, I can see him either being based off his movie appearance or his undead Michael Afton look from the games, with either one being an alternative skin for Mike. But I think the movie Mike has a better chance of being the main look because he is the more mainstream look of the character. As I said in the beginning of the video, which I won't blame you for forgetting, but like the killers, survivors also have perks that they give them small advantages in the match. Unlike the killers where I found a hard time thinking of a full set of perks for him, but for Mike, I can think of 3 perks he could have. Like one based on his game counterpart, one based on his movie counterpart, and a third one that's more general based on FNAF gameplay, which are You Won't Die, Dream Theory, and Hex, Me Bird Likes You. Starting off with the game-based perk You Won't Die, this is based on the Sensitive Location custom night cutscene where after Mike got scooped, worn as a disguise, and after Ennard escaped into the sewers after the body ordered to watch. After Mike hearing the phrase You Won't Die, he got up again. Now this would naturally be similar to Left 4 Dead Bill's perk. This is really similar where he can get down once and then get back up again. But with this perk, this would be a continuous cycle where no matter the time the killer downs you with either a basic attack or the power and just leaves you on the ground, you can always get up by letting yourself heal, as you can never bleed out from being laid on the ground. But the counterpoint would be every time you get back up, you get a negative status effect, and after you get up the second time, you can never be healed from the injured state. Next, the movie-based perk Dream Theory. That's only based on the plotline of the film where Mike uses his dreams to try to find out what happened to his brother, but means that the animatronics can also talk to him, or at least the spirits of the animatronics can talk to him. So this perk would reimagine that plotline by having Mike able to use the power button to basically zone out and see where the killer is. but the counterplay to that being, just like the film, the killer can also see Mike doing this and can see him. So there'd be that kind of playoff where, yes, you know where they are, but at the same time, they can also see where you are. Finally, a pretty game-based perk, Hex, My Bird Likes You. Now, I know Mike isn't the protag of Autocrossonate unless you subscribe to that Mike and Crying Child theory, but this idea came to me and it just felt too fun not to include. After Mike, or any survivor with a perk, lets a totem, every so often a robotic pirate bird will spawn and sit where a crow would spawn and sit, and will despawn if not interacted with. But if you do interact with it, Rockstar Foxy spawns in with that line and gives you a choice of 3 boosts. 1. Advance a nearby generator. 2. Heal you if you are injured. And 3. Soundproofing, where you don't make a sound for a limited amount of time. And finally, 4. A rare option that just gives you 3 blood points. That's how you level up in game. However, you have to be careful, as there's a chance that Foxy will jump scare you and alerting the killer to your location. As for skins, other than the ones we just went over, I guess the other outfits Mike had in the movie, and maybe a few different recolors of the fast-best security guard outfit, like other than the one we've seen in the movie, because we're gonna get a more game canon recolor or different look, and of course they've got a few different versions of Undead, Michael Afton. Now with the most likely one out of the way, how about 2 out there ones with Grandma Freddy and the staff bots being survivors? Grandma Freddy might sound a very out there idea for a survivor, especially with how big he is. Like, I'm pretty sure he's just as big, if not bigger, than Knight is. But personally, this is something that is in character, as he isn't an aggressive animatronic, he is a very helpful one. Plus, with some of his perks that came to mind, there's really sort of like the idea in my mind of Grandma Freddy being a survivor. Plus, this would be a very creative way, personally, of having Freddy himself being the FNAF collaboration. Those perks being Road Superstar, Roxy's Eyes, and Mochi's Claws. With Road Superstar, or just Superstar, this will be a cooperative perk where it boosts cooperative actions, either that be cooperative healing or cooperative gen repair. Then with Mochi's Claws, this will be like a token style perk where you build up a certain amount of tokens, let's say 5, and hit that number, you're able to break down destructible walls. Don't know how useful that would be for a survivor, but that would be something in character Grandma Freddy to possibly have. And finally, Rocky's Eyes. There's really a perk where it would allow you to see any totems, lit or not, shards if you have that chance equipped, and maybe traps from either the Trapper or the Hag. One last thing we move on from Grandma Freddy to the staff bots is that for whoever comes to DVD, whether it be Springtrap or Funtime Freddy, like even just using Funtime Freddy for example, if he does come to DVD, he should definitely be voiced by Kevin Goff, or at least reuse voice lines from the previous games, as well, if plays either how I suggested or plays a different way that they feel like is in character for Funtime Freddy. But if he doesn't have his voice, then that isn't really fully Funtime Freddy, as that voice more or less completes his character. Actually, that is more or less the whole appeal of Funtime Freddy, one of the first voice Freddy's, but also the voice just completes Funtime Freddy. So if he does come and isn't voiced, that would be a huge letdown. The only exception to the lineup I suggested that could make it in being Nightmare Foxy, as he and Nightmare Bonnie and Chica don't have voices. But personally, if he does come, I think he should still get a voice, as that would fill in a characterization gap that Nightmare Foxy needs. But moving on now onto the staff bots. Unlike my problem with fully describing making Gamma Freddy work as a survivor, this doesn't apply to the staff bots, as personally they have a lot of costumes that can be used as skins for the DVD store or just for unlocks. Alongside Help Wanted 2 showing that they can be emotional, which is the in-game reason why Entity created the games in the first place, to feed off emotion. Plus, if you subscribe to the theory that all of the missing human staff got literally axed and were used to possess the staff bots, also perks and lore-wise, but personally, this is just a pure fun pick, as I think it would be really funny to hear the staff bot's TTS voice making all the pain groans, with the Grace one just saying pain noises. And personally, I can see them coming with the perk Hex Map Bot. After lighting a totem and getting traced into the totem zone, Mapbot jump scares the killer, stopping them in their tracks, force them to take a map, and the killer has to do a skill check to throw Mapbot aside to continue the chase. In the final stress now, I'm going to try and quickly go over a few minor things that could be added in the FNAF chapter. Starting off, the proper costume for the Huntress. As I previously stated, the Huntress hums a lullaby during the match, and as you can see wears a mask. So I think giving her the puppet costume can work, especially if they change Huntress's lullaby and make her hum My Grandfather's Clock, which is the song that plays from the Puppets music box. And then during a chase, hunters can then begin to sing Pop Goes Weasel. Next, Vanny and Glitch Trap skins for the Legion. Well, I could see these two being their own killers, but this feels more likely to me personally. All that behavior has to do is just include Vanny's unique sounds and chase music for her skin. And I could also see Singularity getting a FNAF skin, either of Inard or the Mangle, depending on how they want to stylize the Mangle. Especially since I can see them replacing Singularity's scythe with, say, Mangle's costumed head. So whenever Singularity attacks, it's Mangle's fox head that bites the survivor for his basic attack, and maybe even change up the boy to be the infamous bite of 87. And the final killer skin, I could possibly see the Dreads having a modern Freddy skin, and also possibly a Mango skin, depending on how stylized they want to take Mango. And finally, a Fazbear security outfit skin for all survivors, with the only possible exceptions being licensed survivors, as I don't know if the license holders would want to play ball with this idea. And that's it. If you're still watching this, thank you for sticking through this long video. This definitely took on a beast of its own, but I want to make this a fully comprehensive video of what I think could happen for the FNAF crossover. And what do you think? And what do you think I possibly missed? And do you agree with everything I suggested? But in any event, thank you for watching.